You want to hear something weird? Okay. So me and you, we met on my podcast, and then we've talked back and forth, and we're kind of, I think we connected in some ways, some kind of kindred spirit kind of stuff. And you've done me on your show and stuff. We've had that. But it's not like we're really close friends or I know you very well. So, but I hadn't heard from you in a while. And then I didn't see you posting anything. And I was starting to get concerned. I said, man, I don't know what's up with my friend. So I was torn between, because I'm 50. This isn't really my generation, how to deal with technology and what's etiquette and stuff. So, but to me, if I make a friend, if I say you're my friend, like you're my real friend. Like if you were in town, you could stay at my house. It's like, I know that people, they're on the internet and if I connect with you, like we're really friends. So I was like, I should see if he's okay. But then I thought if I send a text and say, are you, or a message, you're okay. They be like, who is this guy? Why is he bothering me? Like so I thought it might be strange, but then I thought, you know what? I think being a human and checking on my friend is more important than being embarrassed that I, cross some line, an internet line that we're not really that close of friends or something. So I said, I was like, hey, you all right, man? How you doing? And I knew something was going on or that you were something was going on because you're usually on it, man. You're posting stuff. You're all about that. And I was like, I don't know what's going on with him, but I'm glad to see you back and to see you're okay.
Oh, man, thank you so much. And we are back. I'm going to just keep on flowing with it. Creating Greatness Podcast. I appreciate your concern. I think that more people should exhibit that kind of care and concern. I mean, worst case scenario, I say, hey, I'm fine. And in my mind, I'm thinking you're nuts, but you stay true. I wouldn't do that. But let's say I did.
Worst case.
True to who you are, and you stay genuine. And I think that's the more important piece of information in this story. But I did appreciate it, man. And it meant a lot to me, this marks the third time that you'll be on my podcast. So you tied with anyone else that I've had on as many times. And part of it is the familiarity and the friendship, but a larger part of it is my respect for your mind and the way that you think. It's certainly different than anything that I'm used to. So we're just going to dive right into it, man. I'd like to make a retraction on Championship Mindset Round 5 right in the beginning, because I recorded so many episodes back to back. I said it's round 3. It was the order of the recordings, not of the actual publications. But the first thing we're going to talk about a lot, man. I don't know. Maybe we go about it 45 minutes to an hour here. Maybe we don't go through it all. Maybe we get to round 2, man. As you guys know, my spiritual warriors, that's actually what I'm going to name this episode. And I'm going to do that in honor of all of us who have been through drama, trauma, strife, have faced adversity, handled adversity. And the most important aspect of it to me was that probably for the first time in my life, this adversity that I have been facing over the course of the last couple of months, and why, as Tony said, that I haven't been posting or haven't been publishing podcasts, was that I faced it honorably. I faced it righteously. I faced it with my eyes fixated on a godly or holy purpose, because everything in me wanted to buckle. Everything in me wanted to use or do sort of vice-like behavior, overeat, or like whatever. There's ways that I cope with things, and I'm sure everyone has their own. And I'm just saying the things that were coming to my mind, but I stayed true. I stayed disciplined. I stayed diligent. And it really didn't make it any easier, other than the fact that I could always resort or rely on that fact that you stayed strong, you stayed disciplined, you stayed diligent. Your family looked to you for strength in this time of small crises. And you were that backbone, and you were that muscle, and you were that foundation that you preach about. Although internally, I certainly faced very much struggle. And we're going to talk about that struggle. We'll get into it. I mean, I was really back and forth at battle with my thoughts, at battle with my energy, my motivation, my inspiration, questioning everything. And we're going to get into that a lot, because I think that every person of greatness, which I certainly consider myself, and even people that are on their way to it, face those dark times. I was reading a little bit of Jordan Peterson's book. I'm getting back into that, and where he talked about Jesus, where he was out in the wilderness for 40 days. And I'm not comparing myself to Jesus. It just was a story that brought me solace during my time of hardship, where he was out and facing a 40-day fast, and the devil tempted him with all manner of wonderful and stayed true to his faith. So me sort of relying on that, it really brought me solace. I sheathed myself in the armor of my faith and my righteousness, and I came out on top because I'm back. I'm here, and I'm shining for it. There's no regrets. There's nothing in my behavior that I look back and frown upon, that I really folded during the face of adversity. I really just struggled mentally, and that's what we're going to talk about more. But the first thing I want to talk about, man, and I'm going to get your take on this, Tony, is I have been on YouTube and searching for that motivation, man, searching for like-minded people that don't agree with me, just searching for that spark. I needed to get back into things. And something that I seen, and sometimes anger or frustration sort of sparks you into action. And I seen Oprah Winfrey on a commercial on YouTube speaking about meditation, which, much appreciated. If I can use her language, I'll say the effort is much appreciated, is what she says, as she patronizes meditators in telling them that they're not doing it right. That I appreciate the effort that you're meditating, but you're not doing it right. She actually uses that language, and I really detest anyone telling someone that they're not meditating right. It's absolutely defeats the whole purpose of what meditation is, if you ask me. But she says you need to raise your vibration before you start meditating and all these things. And I say, okay, Oprah, maybe that was correct for you, but I'm here to tell you that you're absolutely wrong. I faced my darkest demons during meditation. My vibration was probably awfully low, since I was incarcerated in a very maximum security prison with a lot of unfriendly forces at work, to say the very least. And I certainly had a lot of internal demons as well as external ones. And I faced all those, I'm sure, at a very low vibration place of mind. And I actually found my way out through meditation. So I just thought to myself, Oprah, we appreciate you owning half of Hawaii and keeping it as a private island. We appreciate that. Thank you. And we also appreciate your wonderful meditation advice. But you're wrong. And I really don't like the fact that you're deterring people from meditating, because what meditation is meditation practice to enable you to be more meditative in your life. So all meditation is practice. So who are you to tell people they're doing it wrong and that they need to raise their vibration before they even begin to meditation, when meditation itself is a way to higher your vibration? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm certainly no expert on meditation. I would say that it's discouraging when someone is very dogmatic about something, religion, meditation, any kind of practice, and they say, well, this is the way to do it. This is rigid. Then it's very discouraging to me. And I know a lot of people, if you don't fit into that mold. Being that I have problems with questioning myself and my own self-confidence, that I have that naturally. So now when someone says this thing that you're going to try, or you're thinking about trying, has to be done specifically this way. You got to sit this way. You got to do it at this time. You got to do it for this length. You got to use this mantra. You got to do whatever. If I can't do it perfectly, then I'm obviously not good enough to do it. So it's very discouraging. And so that's what I'd say is I'm discouraged. I'd be discouraged if someone that I was looking to for advice about it. I mean, when I started to meditate, I started to listen. I read Sam Harris's book. I think it was Waking Up. I was looking at every meditation app on the phone. I did all my research, looked up different types of meditation, and I come to the conclusion that there's just if there's only one way, man, I couldn't find it. Like the way, like there's one way to meditate, even Zen Buddhists, I really like the idea, because I realized that in some ways I was meditating for years. And what I like is I like to hike. Mm-hmm. I like to go on 2-3 mile walks, and Zen Buddhists, some form of meditation they use is walking meditation. So it's not always sitting in the Zazen position or whatever that is, so I don't know. I don't really look to Oprah Winfrey for much. honestly.
No,
I guess I don't really look to her for much, so I don't know what to say about her. She seems, I mean, it's so weird that someone so far out of my lifestyle, out of almost everybody you possibly know's lifestyle, so different, has such an impact on so many people. They think that they're like them. It's the same with politicians, people identify with this politician, that politician. And the truth is they have millions of dollars. They enjoy a lifestyle and a luxury, and they're surrounded by people, and they lead a life that is so alien to most of us that I don't understand how they think that they could actually understand my life or connect with me. You know what I mean? And I think that's an illusion created. It's an illusion to think that these people, these really big stars or personalities or these politicians actually understand the average, my life necessarily. So there's a disconnect for me there, for sure.
Totally agreed. And the thing is she's telling people how to do it, and maybe that's the way that she's done it. But even if she was some connection on some level of how everyday life really was, it's just like when I say anything, which I'm pretty entrenched in day-to-day life, an average American Joe, I'm telling you what worked for me in hopes that you could sort of mess with that, play with that, experiment on your own, and find your own way. Because I've done meditations of all sorts: folded legs, straight legs, laying down in a yoga position, walking. As you said, I do that regularly. I find that to be very beneficial. Sometimes when I don't want to sit still, maybe I'm anxious, or maybe I have something on my mind, or something that I really want to pound out, and the walking, while focusing on each step and how the step's done, and attempted perfect balance and all that, helps me as well. And I didn't really want to get into a whole thing about Oprah. It just sort of spurred me into action. Like, how could she possibly tell people exactly what to do and how to do it? So we're just going to move on. I was equally disappointed in Jay Shetty, who has some really great things to say, man. Love that guy. I've heard a lot of his talks and really appreciated what he has to say. Appreciated his perspective and agreed with most what he say, but he's shaking his head like a dummy while she's saying it. Like, hey, I know you're on there with Oprah, but come on, man. I don't know what you were nodding your head at. So,
I really been one of the things I was going to say about is I've learned a lot. I like a lot of what Alan Watts says about these kind of things, and his attitude is, hey, if you want to meditate, then meditate. If you don't. I mean, the idea that there's some magic formula, that you can embrace and that will give you all of that, that's an illusion. It's an illusion. And a teacher like you is a person who respects an individual. So you lead by example, you show how it's helped you, and then you give them the freedom to enter in the way they need to. But you're there as a guide, as a support. And, when you dictate things to people and you put rigid, that can discourage a lot of people.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that discouraged me in the beginning about Sadhguru, because everything was so rigid and exact. And I wasn't ready for that level of lifestyle. But what I found is to take it for what it's worth and use what I can use, implement certain things the way that I can. But I appreciate the kind words saying about me. What I look to it as pieces of a puzzle, man. Like you said, and I actually did a whole podcast about that. If you want to dip back in the archives, it was a short one called "There's No Magic Pill," because there's not, man. It's the pieces to a puzzle, and you have to sort of figure that out for yourself and juggle it the way that you could maneuver into your life. For me, it's the cold water and the meditation and the physical exercise and all these things, and the volunteering, the service comes a big play into it for me as well. And that's sort of how I balance it out. But then when things hit, like what was just happening to me, and I'm not going to get too personal with it, but just sort of to give the audience a relatable story, as if you were going through some sort of mental suffering. We came to Florida with a pre-approved $600,000. We were looking at all sorts of houses which were big enough for us to live in at that price. That's just what it is nowadays, folks. And pretty soon into that sort of journey, we figured out it's very well manipulated. It's very well structured to steer you where they want you to live, steer you where you're allowed to live. If you really want to be frank, you are this credit score, you make this amount of money, you can live here. And a lot of that is steering you into HOAs, which is the opposite of freedom. If you ask me, your bush has to be this high, your lawn has to be cut this often, and all these sort of things. Like, no thanks. So that was a frustrating point. We were getting steered into neighborhoods that we didn't want to be in based upon, who we were, what we did for a living, and how much money we had. And then as it got deeper and deeper and deeper, as we started looking into different programs, like my wife's a nurse, so some states have Hometown Hero where you could get, down payment assistance if you're a nurse buying in that state. But we made too much for that, and we moved around too much for this other program. And there's all sorts of crazy loopholes that, in my opinion, really squash the middle class. And if we had a lesser credit score and less money, we would have been, if we made less money and had less credit and had less money down, we would be sitting in a house that we own right now. And that is was part of the frustrating thing. Equally was that we made a bid on a house for $600,000. We won that bid. We were 2 weeks away from close, and there was some sort of snag in the fine details, and it all blew up in our face. And then that same day, I had family members rush to the hospital. So all these sort of things are happening, and I'm really going on this emotional roller coaster, and I'm really starting to get negative within my mind. And the reason why I speak about this story is because I know I'm not the only one. Yeah. I know I'm not the only one, man. And when things start going awry, when things start going bad, that starts sort of cycling down this spiral of thought where things get darker and darker and darker, and people get ruder, and people seem to be just in your way and sort of an encumbrance rather than brethren and sisters. And the situations become borderline overwhelming. Anger starts rising to the pot, upsetness, vice-like behaviors due to bad coping mechanisms sort of all starting to come into play, and very nasty and negative in the mind. Oh, F this, F that, I can't, you start going down this rabbit hole. And some of the rabbit holes, before I bring it back to the light, because I am angry. I'm angry as a citizen of the world, not just America, about a lot of things. And part of it is that whole process that I just went through, and the things that I could see very clearly that were implemented that it's because of this, it's because of that. But when you're in tune, you know exactly why it is. And I do as well. So I start thinking, as I'm going down this rabbit hole, how did we even get here, man? Because I'm in this negative roller coaster. And just for shits and giggles, please ride along with me. We're going to get back to the light. My spiritual warriors, we always get back to the light. But let's be real. Let's be pragmatic. Let's talk about handling adversity and facing it in the right way. But so I start going down this route. How did we even get here? I'm looking for insurance companies for this house, when every time I have a medical issue or there's a dental issue in my family, my insurance fights me to pay for it, or they only pay for a small amount of it. I'm paying these people thousands and thousands of dollars. The same thing happened here in Florida with the storm. People had to get lawyers to get payouts from the last hurricane because these insurance companies that are collecting our money day in and day out, now they don't want to pay. And I start walking into the grocery store. I have to do that. It's a chore that we all have to do, whether we have children or not. I walk through aisle 1, chips and crackers and fake food and genetically modified stuff. I walk through another one, it's alcohol. I walk through another one, it's some sort of sugary processed aisle. I got to get 4 or 5 aisles into my grocery store to find a real food item, something that's really natural from the earth, that's actually good for my body. And when I find that item, it's come with a heavy tax. It comes with a super expensive label. We're organic. Only people that have a little bit of extra money can eat healthy. The rest of you can go back down the aisle and drink Kool-Aid and Doritos and probably develop some sort of major medical issue in the next 5 to 10 years. That's real. Most of our food, not most, but there is a list of 10 to 15, maybe 20 things. I'm uneducated in the amount of food that they sell in America and food additives that are illegal everywhere else in the world. So let's be aware of that. You see my head spiraling down this negative trajectory?
Sure.
So that won't give me to our benevolent leaders who continually let's just say this. They're immoral at best. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because we're here to connect and unite and find better answers together. But I'm frustrated with the immoral acts of our leadership. To me, a leader is someone that you can look up to for that, strong hand, that faithful, that discipline, that kind, generous, loving, but still strong. But we that is absolutely absent in the government today. And we're sort of being handed this reality based on falsities. And I no longer will accept that narrative. And before we go on, we're moving to the light. Stay with me here. But let's take this, for me, I take it as fuel. And we're going to get to why I take it as fuel and what I do in order to turn all these negative emotions that I'm having. I'm very frustrated. I'm suffering mentally by my own design. And I think that's worth mentioning as well, that most of us suffer by our own design. I'm mentally anxious. I'm mentally depressed. I'm mentally angry, all within my own body. Nobody else is affected by this. Me, I'm making myself suffer by having these negative emotions. But what sort of, do you have similar issues? Because I guess I'm looking for people to listen to this and comment on this and go, man, I went through it too. And I know what you're going through. And I guess I'm outreaching to the spiritual warriors out there as well as yourself with this line of talk.
Yeah, man. I mean, most of I would say the majority of my suffering, I've determined to understand that it's my way of thinking that perpetuates it. And so now I feel like, even though I haven't mastered the discipline of dealing with those thoughts and emotions, at least I know that's what's happening. I mean, that's a first step, really, because if you get wrapped up in the circumstances of why you're angry and why you're horribly upset, right, then you can't really see that a lot of the suffering is just in your mind. And it's a matter of how you look at it. So I run into that all the time. I really, every 2 or 3 months, every couple months, I go through a real dark place in my mind. And on a daily basis, I will get attacked with thoughts that like, hey, your life is hopeless. You're just worthless. What are you good? Just the most terrible things. And so it's always in my mind, and it's like my circumstances, I found it's almost like you're crazy. I'm just going to be honest. It's like I'm insane because I can have this issue here. The well's got to be fixed. The dryer's breaking. My kids are not behaving the way I want them to. Me and my wife, there might be something wrong or something, and like my life. And like, so for the first part of the day, it's like, oh man, this is all terrible. Like, oh, everything's falling apart. And then if I get a different perspective on it somehow, and I look at my life from a larger perspective, there's a million different ways to do it. The Stoics said, get a view from 10,000 feet, where you look at your life or you think about your past, or you stop thinking about what might happen in the future. There's a lot of different ways then all of a sudden I'm like, my life is awesome. I have nothing to worry about. Like, it's unbelievable. So that makes you think, okay, so what the heck is going on? If it's just a matter of way I'm thinking about it, that is monumental. And I would say, so I understand completely where you're at, and I could be there in 10 minutes from now. If my mom calls me and says I'm sick, or, she's almost 80 or something happens, but I operate myself. My biggest enemy is fear. I'm afraid of what the government might do. Oh, this guy's in office, he's going to raise taxes, and oh man, the inflation's going to go crazy. Oh my God, I have to have this expensive car and everything and it's going to break down, and I don't have health insurance, or I own this and it's a weight on my back, and I got to work so much hard to pay for it. And my kids are doing this and this and that. What's going to happen? How that's going to affect my life? What's going to happen with them? And it's like fear is my biggest enemy, and it causes so much pain and suffering in my life. I could just live my life in complete fear of everything happening. And I notice, there's people in my life that I love and they're great people, but like they'll call me and I can see that they have that fear in them. They want to know, they want a checklist of everything that's okay so they don't got to worry about me, right? That's how they operate. That's life's only good as long as everything's okay. And man, that's an illusion. And it's so funny that you said this because, I just got done reading the Tao Te Ching. Have you ever read that? The Taoist?
Yes,
okay. Yes. And it's really reading it is, I just want to meditate on it every day. But one of the things that has been blown me away and just every day I keep thinking about it was one of the sayings was stop thinking, solve all your problems. That's crazy, man. Stop thinking, solve all your problems. And I've been really on this journey exploring that. I'm not saying I got it all down. My Western mind has a very hard time really internalizing some of the Eastern thought and philosophy, but the idea of the non-doing, doing, of Lao Tzu, going with the flow, and instead of striving and grasping and it's the pain, it's the striving and grasping and trying to control life is what causes suffering. That's what his proposition is. Suffering is caused by me trying to control my circumstances, trying to control people, trying to, I got to have this, or I want to have this, or I got to get rid of this, or I got to get rid of that. And, it's not a spirit of laziness. That's where the hard part is to understand, because it's like, okay, you're supposed to go with the flow. You're supposed to let go of things. You're not supposed to kind of control everything. You're not supposed to grasp and strive after everything, right? So what does my mind say? Yeah, that sounds great, man. Stop thinking about tomorrow. Stop worrying about the past. Be in the present in the moment, and I'll get rid of 90% of my suffering. But part of me says, yeah, but you got to do these things that you don't want to do. So that requires discipline, and that requires being there every day and being reliable and putting the work in, right? Both of those are true. I think the hardest part for me to understand it is how to not grasp and control things and not to worry about things I can't control. And then how to apply that in my everyday life. How do I meditate and do yoga and exercise and do the things I love to do, but not turn them into drudgery? It's a drudgery. I gotta do my yoga. I gotta meditate. I gotta exercise. I only walk 2 miles. I should walk 4 miles. Oh, I ate bad. I ate this thing bad. I should have ate good. And then before you know it, my whole life is just a checklist of crap that I have to get checked off. And even though I did everything I wanted to, if I mess up one thing, then I failed. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, that's where the applying of the letting go and letting the universe carry you through and accepting and being, going with what you have and not striving, grasping. The application of that is where that's difficult. Mm-hmm. And so I completely understand. It's so easy for me to say to you, hey, man, it's all in your thoughts. Just stop thinking, solve all your problems, right? But it's the revelation of that truth. When you have it, that changes you, It's like, that's true. In the moment, you might not be applying it, but eventually you'll be like, oh, wait a minute. This is where life carried me. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is what was supposed to happen. And it changes everything. When you let the river carry you here, now you're over here, now it carries you there, and you're going places, but you're not swimming upstream. You're not forcing the river to carry you anywhere. You're just going to where he leads you. So wherever you have gone through this little journey, that's where it should have taken you. And I'm sure you could have avoided some pain if you would have been able to kind of flow with it. But emotions are tough, Yeah. Do you have a thought without an emotion?
I'm sure I do. I try to use emotion as the spark that ignites the thought into action. And if I have negative thoughts, I try to not attach emotion to it. However, that's a lot more difficult than it sounds, hence why we're talking about this. And I'm glad you didn't go, yeah, well, just don't think about it. I wanted the long answer, because within that long answer, you gave the audience, if they're listening, a couple tools. One was the Stoic view, is that I always like to take back, the screen. It's the difference I always related to being a manager, because that's part of my life, was when I went from being a worker in the trenches, solving the problem from the trenches, and then having that window view, being able to step back out of the day-to-day operations, out of the moment-to-moment operation, and sort of take a bigger view, a grander perspective of things. Mm-hmm. And then I was always able to come back to the problem and sort it out a lot easier than I was when my mind was stuck in the problem. So that's valuable. And the Tao Te Ching was good. It was a long time that I read it, but that is true. And it is hard to implement that in the moment when you're frustrated or angry, or something's really going wrong, and go, okay, just. So more and more, I'm trying to cultivate the ability to control the way that I am, man, because you're trying to practice that letting go of everything that you can't control. And to some degree, I'm able to do that. But the thing that I have a lot harder time doing is controlling the way that I'm operating. Even if I'm able to maintain my behavior so that everyone surrounding me doesn't really realize that I'm internally suffering, that's really my aim, because I'm the man, I'm the fan, the father, I'm the patriarch of this little enterprise that we have. It's like when I became a manager, a good manager said to me, never let them see you sweat. Always walk in smiling, shaking hands and all that. And that's a value, with my family. It's like, you're always put on the smile, and it's not faking it. It's, it's not me shunning my emotions or shunning my feelings. It's me sacrificing my emotions for the greater good. And that's what real men do. And we've been talking about that regularly here on Championship Mindset Talks. But so that's what I'm looking for, is to help. And if anyone out there can weigh in on this conversation, please email me, creatinggreatnesspodcast@gmail.com. I'm open to debate. Follow me at King of Comebacks on all social media outlets. And also not only develop that control, although that would be like really the culmination of my life, to walk through hell with a smile on my face and operate the way that I want to operate no matter what.
Let me ask you something.
Shoot.
This is I'm not trying to lead you down any path, but here I want to wonder what you were thinking, because I've heard it put this way. It sounds very interesting. Okay. So say you read a book, or you talk to someone who's very good at learning how to develop your muscles and really build up your body in an exercise, right? So you sit down and you learn all this knowledge of what you're going to do. You see videos of how to do it and all that stuff, right? If by studying that, you still can't get to where you want to get, you actually have to go to the gym, or you have to actually pick the weights up, right? And so I think it's very interesting. So I read something about Taoism, and I read the book, and I get this truth. But it's interesting. It's okay. I intellectualize it. I'm understanding it. I'm thinking about it. But until I'm in the pressure, until I'm in the part where I actually have to practice letting go, that's where I build the muscle. So at that moment, like this last week this period of time when you've been going through that, it was like you're curling, man. Like you've been lifting, you've been at the gym, you've actually built your muscle, because you've that's the part of applying this wisdom. It's like knowledge, applied knowledge is wisdom. So it's like in that moment, and I never really liked it. Who wants to be in pain, but at the same time, we like the results, right? Yeah. And I think that, I like to try to remember that. I don't always, but I like to try to remember it when I'm going through it. I was just talking to a guest the other day, and it seems like the only way, one of the key ways that we can actually learn when we're going through these things, and how do we apply wisdom, is the key to that is somehow to take a step back from what is happening. Do you know what I mean? Like you just said, you said, instead of you're feeling all these emotions and you're suffering, but you're taking those negative ones, you're looking at them and saying, I don't want to display them. I'm not going to ponder them. I'm not going to let them take root. But that requires a distance between you and that emotion. So, because a lot of times in our life, especially when I was younger, I acted on my emotion immediately. and it was only through practice and thinking. I think meditation really helps with that. And going through difficult trials, it's like we start to learn to see the thought and the emotion coming in, and we have some distance from it. And that's a long process of learning how to, it's like, okay, well, my emotions got a hold of me that time. That sucks. Or sometimes at first I'll be like, oh, I'm not going to entertain that. And then something else will come up behind me and hit me in the kidney or something. And I'll fall into it. But at least I made a little progress. And that is like key, is stepping back from your situation and being able to kind of look at it objectively. That's the key to this. Otherwise, we're just going to be ruled by our emotions and ruled by the situation, and we'll never really make any progress.
I think that's part of it for me, that I get frustrated with myself. And I go, you've been meditating for 7 years now. You've been practicing yoga and working out and praying every day, and you're doing all the right things as far as like my intuition or my gut or my honor code or my moral, like the way that I feel internally without anyone telling me what's right or wrong. I feel like I've walked that truth, very strongly. So I get frustrated and I get down on myself, like, man, you should be better. And if I act out on emotion, which I do, in fact, one of the things that I regret, I'll say right here as well, is that I did a championship mindset talk, number 1 with Cam and CL the Source, and we were talking about stay-at-home dads, and there were some guys on the internet throwing shots at stay-at-home dads, and I got very agitated about it, because I go, I dare one of you guys to say something in my face, because I'm a stay-at-home dad, and these are the ways that I add value to my household, and I got emotion. And the thing, okay, so you can get frustrated at yourself. I think that's fair. I think that analyzation of your behavior is key to improving. Secondarily, I think that reflection on it is what makes you learn the lesson next time, but you have to make some connections. And here's one that Sadhguru taught me, and I'll just share. I've probably shared it before, is that anytime that I've gotten angry and acted out upon anger, I've looked back and felt like I felt foolish. So that was key. You see how I maintain, how I operate, and I do not want to look foolish. It's something that I just don't want to do. And that is something where I felt foolish after publishing a podcast. I, of course, published it. There was a lot of good value there. The guy said some great stuff. I said some great stuff. But there was the moment where I sort of lashed out at these imaginary internet guys that were talking trash on stay-at-home dads. And I just thought, no, okay, you lost it there. But like I said, I published it. I pushed through with it. But I never mentioned it verbally out loud like I am here today. But I believe I owe that to my audience. And secondarily, it was just a lesson. Like, I don't want to be doing that again, not only in my private life, but definitely not in my public life, is what I'm sharing here with you guys on Creating Greatness. And that helped me. Haven't done it yet again. But in my personal life, I have, and I'm still working on that. But another thing about what I was just going through, and what some things that you said was, sometimes you don't apply it till you get pressured. You talk about it, you have the knowledge. Which they also say, the Buddha says, is we don't really know. I don't really know, but it correlates to what you were saying about knowledge and wisdom. Is they say knowledge without action is ignorance. Yeah. So you have to apply it. You have to integrate it into your life. And sometimes when that pressure comes, maybe you do buckle, maybe you do fold, maybe you do feel mentally struggling, maybe you do suffer, but that pressure is going to do one or two things, man. It's going to create that diamond and make you stronger and better and more resilient than you've ever been, or it's going to turn you bitter and jagged, and you start getting hateful and negative and more. And we don't want to continue cycling down that spiral. We want to snap out of it. And it's also a testament to something else that I'll say about this little trial that I went through, is the speed of your recovery. Not just the speed of recovery in the gym. We talked about that before. That's absolutely important. I believe that physical exercise is of paramount importance within your life. But speed of recovery on any other downslide, not just not working out every day, but mentally falling off your diet, falling off of anything that you tried to quit, and that it's the best course of action. I'm going to label some things that I have not relapsed on in many, many years, which is, drugs and alcohol, pornography, and masturbation and things like that. I'm not embarrassed to say those things, because those were bad habits that I had that I eradicated from my life. So now when smaller problems pop up, like anger and anxiety and depression, I got to think back about how long it took me to squash those problems. and to continually, take that widened perspective of now I don't even think about those things. So just continue the work and get back on track fast. It's like, don't have a bad meal or have a bad day or skip a workout and let that turn into a week or a month or longer, man, because a day's not going to kill you. A couple of days ain't going to kill you, but you start falling off for a week and months, and then it could turn a year. You're wasting this God-given life that we have, man, which although it can get sad, it can get frustrating, it can get difficult, it is still a gift. And that's where we always have to bring our mind back to, and something that I continually brought my mind back to each and every day when I was mentally struggling with all these negative emotions was your family's health, because my family member got out of the hospital and was well, but things were still happening. So I go, your family's good, your kids are thriving, you're still physically good, your wife is doing great in her career and school and all these things. So you have to continually bring it back. We're all living, start one. But where I really got, and I want to talk to you about this, I know you have some religious knowledge because I'm reading this Jordan Peterson book. I really love it. I'm loving that they formed the ARC and everything that they're doing there. And while I don't agree with every single thing that comes out of these people's mouth, I appreciate as a counterforce to all the left wokeism, absolute immoral behavior that's going on out there in the world. They're bringing back the structure of responsible citizens and things that we based our lives off of for forever, marriage and all these things, bringing it back to the importance. But as I was going down this dark hole, I started reading into that book about Cain and Abel and how Cain was really not pushed, but a couple things. He pushed himself into murder and treachery because of an obsession of a thought. And that's the way that anything manifests itself in this world. We all have crazy thoughts, but they don't manifest themselves in the real world because we don't harp on it. We don't obsess over it. We don't continually play it out in our mind. For instance, I'm going to say this again. You think me and Tony are crazy? Go ahead. You're going to think again. Because I'm driving down the street. Sometimes I go, I wonder what happened if I crash off the side of the road. I don't think I'm the only person to have this thought. It just happens.
Yeah.
I don't even bat an eyelid to it. I keep driving safely and soundly and securely like I've been taught to do, because that's the practice that I put forth. But how we go down these rabbit holes of the mind, because I'm sure that's just an example of some crazy things that go on my mind or yours as an audience or Tony's. It's the obsession. It's the harping. It's the continual going down that line of thought. If we refuse to go down and we reject negative thoughts at their surface, like I read in The Heart of the Buddhist Path by Dalai Lama, where he said, Buddhists view negative thoughts as the enemy, man. And now I'm really doing that. I mean, I'm listening to affirmations about destroying the enemy, and I'm not picturing any physical being. I'm picturing all my negative thoughts, negative emotions, and negative actions, and I'm squashing those as the enemy.
Yeah.
But where was I at there, Tom?
Well, you were talking about what you read about Cain and Abel during this struggle you're going through.
That's it. Thank you so much for being the smart, sharp-minded person that you are. He was harping. He was obsessed. He was going over these thoughts. But the real reason why he initially had these thoughts was he felt like he was doing the right thing. He was making the sacrifices to God. He was doing the prayer. He was doing this, although I guess there's implications in the Bible, although I'm not an authority, that he was doing it half-heartedly. He didn't have his heart and soul in it. He was going through the motions of it. But because he viewed his actions as righteous and his brothers as the same, although, there would be the argument that Abel's was righteous and in his heart and soul and all, that he was getting punished, although he was doing right. And while I don't harp on it, I didn't obsess over it, I didn't go down the rabbit hole for too long, I did think about it. Obviously not to murder or treachery, but I go, I'm doing right. I'm doing all the right things. What is happening with my life? Why is everything going wrong? Tony, what do you think about that?
All right. Well, okay. Jordan Peterson talks about these things as symbolic, and, it's a metaphor. And, that you could put that aside. Now, from my experience as in Christian in theology, it's really in that respect, and we can go back and forth how it applies to everyone. But the idea, the Bible doesn't specifically say why God rejected Cain's sacrifice. Cain came with one sacrifice. I think it was animals, some kind of animal sacrifice, and or was it? He was a farmer. Can't remember that exactly. He brought something. He brought like food, best of his crops, and Abel brought the first sheep or the best animal of his flock. Okay, but the Bible does not say why God rejected one and didn't like the other, or liked one and didn't like the other. It doesn't say. But so the fact is the importance isn't what kind of sacrifice God likes. The importance was Cain was not able to accept that reality. He wasn't able to accept God's sovereignty, his sovereign choice of God picked this one, he didn't pick that one. So that's, like you said, that's where it went downhill. That's where it changed for him. And God even warned him. He said, hey, why is your face downcast? He asked him. And Cain's like, he goes, sin is crouching at your door. It's waiting for you, but you can resist it. So God saw his face. Cain was upset and even warned him, I know what you're going to do. I know what you're planning on. I know what you're letting into your heart, but you're going down that road. You don't have to do it. It's waiting for you. And that's for everyone. I mean, I think that, every single one of us is going to experience injustice, at least in our minds, right? Every one of us is going to experience that feeling of that. We did our best. We tried everything. We may not know the bigger picture. For whatever reason, all that crap happened. We don't have no idea. So the idea, and then if you want to go to like Taoism or Buddhism, or the idea that you have to take for granted, and then same within Christianity, you have to take for granted that God is good. Or from Taoism, the Tao is good. The universe is good. If you don't start from there, then it's you against the universe or you against God. And that's why it's interesting when people who maybe don't believe in God or don't believe in a higher power, they question that. They cast moral judgment on the higher power. And well, that doesn't make any sense. If you kind of posit the idea of God, then he's perfect. He's perfectly good if the way we understand God. So I as a human with my limited understanding can't cast moral objections on him. He's the author of morality. He's the author of what's right. So I will be fighting a losing battle if it's me against the universe, right? The universe is going to win. So the key to success for Cain would have been, God must want a different sacrifice. I messed up. I'll try again. Mm-hmm. Or God must know what's best. I can't figure it out, but I have to go with it. But instead, he wanted to oppose, and he let that root take him down. I mean, you could.
Hey, man, I just thought it was interesting in the giving in during those times when we feel injustice, when we feel like something was perpetrated upon us and that we've done everything within our power to remain godly and righteous and made the sacrifices. And you sort of have that line of thought like, well, man, I should have just gave in to immediate gratification. At least I'd be enjoying something. If I'm making all these sacrifices in behaviors and dietary choices and everything else, but there's no payoff at the end. It's one thing to accept delayed gratification. I think that's key to overall success, but it's another thing to just never receive it. So I think that is the test. We all go through that test and we have to face it righteously, because in those moments, that is the crack, as you said, for the devil to sneak its way in. And I say devil, but what I mean is any demon that you have in your life. It doesn't have to be godly and not godly, or religious and not religious. It's just, yourself, what is the best possible way to live your life for the ultimate benefit of you and everyone around you. But at that time of test, at that time of injustice, that time of severe negative emotion going on within you, that's that crack for the devil or the demons or whatever your not best self is, your lower self, whatever the worst decisions that you could possibly make, that's when that gap opens up. And I think if we pass that test, not to say we won't be tested again, but like you say, I believe you're lifting that weight. And the next time it becomes easier.
Do you feel you passed that test?
I'm sorry?
Do you feel you passed that test that you just went through?
Yeah, man. And we're about to get into it. And I'm going to tell you how I did. I got snapped out of it. I got snapped out of it. The universe snapped me out of it because I see anywhere that you see or anybody that you come in contact with, it is a reason for it, man. But first of all, I want to go back to a story because it all had to go back to gratitude, man. And some days it was so difficult to go, well, you're alive. Well, your family's alive. Well, everyone's healthy. And I would just be like, I want it to go right. I was that level of frustrated. And that's why I want to articulate that to the audience because I feel it, man. I'm here with you, you know. But the Spiritual Warriors isn't about, it isn't about not feeling that way. It's coming back from that shit, man. And that's why I call myself the king of comebacks. I have a miraculous ability to come back. And once again, I'm here preaching a good word, man. And I'm going to be here for a very long time to come. But I'm going to go back when I was in a halfway house in Atlantic City, New Jersey, man. I had just gotten out of incarceration. I was free, but not free. And I got dropped off at a doctor's appointment in the middle of Atlantic City because they would give you those day passes where you could leave or whatever for a little bit if it was something, you know, that was like a doctor or funeral, certain obligations they would let you out for. So I'm out front. I am waiting like so long for this doctor's appointment and I'm getting angry. I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting, poor me and all these things. Not thinking like, hey, you could be locked up or you could be stuck in that halfway house listening to Groot, you know, or whatever like that. I wasn't thinking that. I was out in fresh air, well, as fresh as it gets in Atlantic City. and I could have been thinking about that, but I wasn't. So this lady comes down the street with a shopping cart. And believe in angels when you see them, man. And I don't care that the lady was homeless. I could only tell because of her shopping cart, because her skin was glowing. She had a giant smile on her face. And I was sitting on that step waiting to go see that doctor with a puss on. And she looks at me and makes eye contact with me. And she smiles as big as she could possibly smile and say, God is good. And I said, yes, he is. Yes, he is, man. It totally shifted my perspective. So thank God for people and them little angels that come when you need them. This time it was a form of a little girl with her mom in a store. Me and my wife were in a store shopping. You know, I tried to have a daughter twice. That's why I got 3 boys. I thought having a daughter would be really cool. I thought it would help me spiritually grow, and it would be nice to create a strong, independent woman who knows what a real man's supposed to be. So I sort of looked forward to that challenge, but the universe handed me different cards. But I see this little girl with her mother, and I'm walking with my wife, and she looks at me, you know, for no reason. You pass by people in the store all the time, and makes eye contact with me and says, I really love your shirt. I had a shirt with like a snake on it. You know, maybe a kid thought it was cool. She goes, I really love your shirt. And I was stuck in my head being whatever. And I just look up at this little shining, bright face, bright-eyed, intelligent little girl. I love your shirt, mister. And I smiled from ear to ear, man. And I got the goosebumps and the chills like, yo, this is what it is, man. And I said, thank you so much for saying that. I genuinely felt that way. So it's like this little like 8-year-old girl just changed my whole life, man. And I said, how are you doing today? It's so nice to meet you. And she said, I'm doing great. How are you doing? And I said, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. And then we were past each other. And that was the level of appropriate talk to a child with an adult. And I just felt better the whole day, man. It lit me up, dude. And I just go, there is good in this world. And it's worth fighting for, man. And I got a lot more words, but how do you feel about that, man? It really changed my whole line of thought.
Yeah, some of the best things in life happen. That's interesting, you know, because I found that some of the very best things that have ever happened in my life are things that there weren't things that I constructed, you know, and I like, you know, there's 2 sides to every coin. There's, you know, what you are really inspiring with, in that, you know, of discipline, of routine, of motivation, and all that is 100% true and accurate. But, you know, I found that I can reduce my life down to a list of things I have to do to try to control what life is going to be. I want to know what's going to happen, and I want to, and I'm not necessarily, what makes life interesting and happy are those unexpected, beautiful experiences that happen. Meeting someone, I mean, you know, having someone do something nice for you, seeing something so beautiful that it just kind of shocks you out of what's happening. You know, people, relationships are what's really, you know, the most, they create the most excitement. They can create a lot of pain too, but the most wonderful things in life is meeting really special people. And the fact that you were open enough to, to hear that and to respond to it meant that you weren't too deep. It was able to penetrate into your thoughts. But yeah, man, I mean, if life was just the way I planned it and just the way I controlled it, it would be boring. It would be all routine. It would be everything. It'd be perfectly organized and structured, but it would be dull, dead. It's the most unexpected, beautiful things in life. Even the stuff that happens that I would never have chose to happen, that creates a life that's worth living, There's something I wanted to ask you about, and I've been thinking a lot about, and I think it's really important for people. How we talked about Oprah giving this advice, and she's way up here, and she's kind of looked at too as like a guru in some ways. She gives us advice about meditation, and then for everyone that can't aspire to what she set down in concrete, maybe they'll be disillusioned. And I guess I want to say to people who might listen to me and you, and completely unintentional in our parts, but don't know us, don't see the totality of our life, don't understand the totality of our experience and what we go through and what we do, might look at their words we're saying and say, oh, that sounds really good, but I blew it. I gave up exercising, I gave up reading, I gave up trying. I've made a bunch of moral decisions that I'm ashamed of. I've let people down. And the truth is that you're still, I want to say, you're still valuable. You're still worth everything, Just there's so many people that have thought they've gone too far and they've done too many things and they failed too many times. Do you know what I mean? It's like they have to look at you and say, this is what I'm aspiring to, and this is what I'm being encouraged to do to make my life better. Like I can actually do steps to make my life better. But even if I want to say on the other side of that, because we can't talk about everything, you can't always, but I want to say on the other side that if you are blown it and you've done things that you're ashamed of, you're not alone. I've done things that I'm ashamed of. I've done things that I wish I'd never done. I've made mistakes 150 times in a row. I've had so many opportunities and I've blown them a million times. But I want to say that if you're alive that day and you're ready and you're still alive, you can start to make your life better. And people like me, and I know people like you, we understand failure. We understand how weak humans can be. It's like, you're not alone. You're not an alien to us. You're still a human being. And the fact that you're a human being and you're a soul makes you valuable, and you can start to rebuild your life. I think that's, if you really study we'll take the Bible, for instance. If you really study the Bible, if you look in like what they call the epistles, the letters to the church, a lot written by Paul, Corinthians, Romans, Galatians, they're in the New Testament, and they're letters written to the early churches to encourage them. And what the methodology is always, it talks about the standard, the holiness of God, the standard of the high standard of Jesus, of how far we all fall short of that. But always after that teaching is the teaching about God's grace, that he knows how weak we are. He knows how sinful we are. He knows how limited we are. You can't have one. If you just have one, we'll all fail and give up. We got to remember that there's grace and mercy in life, and that there's that none of us are so alien from each other, so far out there, where none of us are so far gone that we're not worth redemption. I think that is always has to be, because you got people that criticize some preachers. If you're like, what's his name? He's a really famous preacher in TV, and everybody gets Joel Osteen. Mm-hmm. People always are getting down on him. I said a lot of critical things about him. I actually listened to some of his stuff, and he's actually doesn't say anything bad. He says very encouraging things. But if you go on the other side of grace, if all you do is make excuses for your life and how you messed up, and if all you do is talk about how much of a victim you are, and if all you talk about is hopelessness or giving in, or that it's all okay, that you don't have to make changes, that's lopsided too. I think you have to have both. You have to have the idea of the standard that we should live to, that all of us should attain to, and we probably never attain to. But then you also have to add the idea that there is mercy and grace for all of us because we're all human beings. And it doesn't matter if you fall flat on your face for a day, a week, a year, a month. If you're still alive, there's time to change it, you know? I guess I just wanted, I was thinking about that. And I think that's because I know there's a lot of people out there that have gone through some terrible things and fallen so far and think so badly about themselves that they don't even want to keep trying anymore. And I just want to say, you know, if you're there, I understand and I don't reject you. You know, you're still a human being, and I know you could do better. You could keep working to try just a little step at a time, you know.
Man, thanks for saying that, Tony. You know, I think that was major. You know, it just gave me a little goosebumps because I just had a very similar situation run the Spiritual Warrior program down at the jail where I did a one-on-one with a younger guy, and I noticed he was making more eye contact than the rest during the talk, and I just wanted to pull him aside at the end and give him a little shout of encouragement. And he says that to me, just what you just said. He goes, "What if I fell too far? What if I'm going to hell? And I said to him just what I say to you. I say, you still breathe, or what you just said to me. I go, as long as there's breath in your lungs, man, you have a chance for redemption.
That's
and I
right.
go, every single day, it's one tiny little step in the right direction, and that's where you start, man. It's literally, it could be that small. It doesn't have to be any major move. I seen this movie and it reminded me the kid was overweight and he was eating Twinkie, and I just thought, it could start one less Twinkie. That's where it started for me. Like, it was one less bad habit, it was one less bad food, it was one less negative thought, it was one less negative action. Here I am 7 years into my rigorous discipline, and it's got more rigorous and more discipline, and some things I stopped doing, but here I am still with problems. But once again, we go back to that managerial view, and I've made much leaps and bounds. But we're getting close to that hour, and I have a couple other things I want to say, sort of to try and make this a complete thought process, sort of like the time that I missed here with my Spiritual Warriors on Creating Greatness podcast due to the negative surrounding events and the negative emotions, to now the bringing back, as I'm hoping that you could see and hear the vibrancy in my voice, the energy that I now have back for not only living, but thriving and doing all the wonderful things that I do, and talking about creating greatness and making my family a powerful enterprise and a force to be reckoned with, despite all the losses and defeats that we've taken over the last month, because it really, after my short period of buckling and struggling, it really has just affirmed and strengthened my resolve to never say die, to never accept defeat, and to never take a failure as final until I'm done breathing, man. Every failure is a lesson. I've literally analyzed every single thing that's happened over the last couple of weeks down to the very bone gristle of it, and realized how not to make those mistakes again. The factors that had nothing to do with my behavior, I've documented and noted in my mind for next time we transverse these same waters, I'll be navigating much more effectively. And that's what it's all about, man. But so I stopped off last talking about there is good, it is worth fighting for. And I think that it speaks a lot to just keep your mind focused on the light, keep your mind focused on the highest, the godly, the righteous, and continually strive for that, no matter how many times you fall. I think that oftentimes we think it's going to be easy. No, it's not going to be easy. We are spiritual warriors. If you believe what I believe, we are God's chosen. So we have to be strength and pray for the strength for a difficult life, for an easy one, because easy life is not a very eventful life, and it's not a very impactful life. And that's what I strive to do here at Creating Greatness, is be impactful with my words and create positive vibes and positive energy. One thing that I taken to really realize in my mind over the last couple of weeks was that I can't continually be angry at the world. I can't continually be judging the world and how they are and what's happening if I'm not willing to absolutely live, breathe, and be the changes that I want to see, because I have to lead by example. I have to become firm in my truth and let that truth and vibrancy radiate throughout my household, creating the baby little humans to be good and righteous and just and loving and kind and fair. And then my wife, my mom, and everyone who lives in my household, to my neighborhood, my communities, and my state and beyond. And that's the way that you actually will see change. It's like you can't throw rocks when you live in a glass house. So let's fix ourselves. Let's work on ourselves. Let's focus in getting everything in order within our lives and let that radiate throughout the world. You really have to breathe it, embody it. Stop talking about it. Stop judging other people for not being like it. You be it. You be it. And I want to talk to people about the preparation, because I'm not no doom and gloom sort of guy. But one thing I do want to talk about is just like the things I talk about, just because I'm not harping or focusing on them, it doesn't mean that I'm not seeing that they are there. And I just really think it's important for people to cultivate skills that cannot be taken away from them. Those skills are your mindset, your character, but also I add into a lot of things that I'm learning about now, and it's collecting water, cleaning water, growing our own food. As you, the farm industry is under heavy fire, and they're trying to vaccinate livestock. They're trying to GMO every seed. They're keeping control of certain seeds, so farmers can only have certain, seeds for different prices. And my answer to that is growing my own food in my own backyard, getting a couple chickens, and having what I need to survive right there in my backyard. And people think that's crazy, but I feel like a chicken is a symbol of freedom anymore here in America. And so, yeah, I think that's the way to prepare. I think a lot of people look and talk down about Andrew Tate, but I'm here coming to support Andrew Tate here. There's a lot of things that I have held back from saying because I didn't want to alienate or not be inclusive to a broader audience. But, there's the right and there's wrong. And I think now is a time where we stand where, I just think you have to find out what's right and truthful and righteous and just within your life. And on a last note, I want to end on the light. When I was struggling, we talked about children in the store, bringing the smile to my face. We talked about the importance of marriage and monogamy and maybe perhaps having a mindset to have children in your life one day in order to make that change that we're talking about here. And we're becoming and we're embodying this change. When I was obviously struggling with podcast topics. If I couldn't think of one positive thing to say to myself, how could I possibly think of positive things to say to you all? So my son, Jonathan, at 6 years old, I asked him for advice for topics for positive podcasts. And here's what he gave me. Get out there. Get out there and live life. Be happy. He didn't articulate how to do this, but he says, be happy. I think getting out there is part of it. Enjoy the earth. It's great advice. Coming straight from a 6-year-old, people.
Yeah.
Be playful and spend time with your family. I think the advice is getting better. I feel pretty good at my job as a father right now. Meditate to be calm. Enjoy the wind and relax. So With that, I'll pass it back to Tony for some final thoughts, man. What do you got for me?
Well, I would just say that if you are basing your value of how you think about yourself and who you are on the people around you, what you see, how you compare yourself to others, if you're basing it on what you've done in the past necessarily, or if you're basing it on certain goals you've set, okay, this is if you don't achieve these things or you don't do these things, or that is not a good way to base your value on yourself. It's like if you do positive things, you'll feel better about yourself. There's no doubt about that. You want to do positive things, you want to make change, you want to have goals. That's how human brains work. But at the same time, you got to be able to recognize that all your plans aren't going to always play out the way you want. That what you think of other people around you, you can't compare yourself to their life and what they're doing. And our society is very, very set up in a way we want to judge ourselves by what we see on the internet, what we see on the neighbors next door. And if you're, it's very important that you're not going to, it's easier to make progress when you're making progress with the intention of just be a better you. You know, I want to work towards my goals. I want to be better than I was yesterday. I want to work, you know, but don't get it all wrapped up in your value. Don't, as a human being, don't think if I don't do it perfectly, if I don't do it right, if I don't do it enough, if I don't do it like Tony, or if I don't do it like Robert, you know, that I'm not good enough. But that's not, you're competing against yourself. You are your competition. You know, you got to want to just be better than you already are. Try to improve yourself, you know, by doing positive things, but you got to be able to forgive yourself and give yourself grace and know that you're just a human being. And that if you set the goals you can't reach, or if you don't reach them today, you might get a chance again tomorrow. But just don't give up, and don't compare yourself to the rest of the world. Most of it's just a friggin' illusion, man. It's an illusion. What you think those people have, you think they're so happy, you think everything's okay here or there. It's all an illusion. It's all an illusion. You don't got to aspire to that. You have everything you need within your mind to make forward progress. And I guess would want to say that to people, because, you know, there's a lot of different programs and a lot of different methods that people can use. And on this podcast, you know, you get a lot of them, and it's great to have that framework, you know, but you know, the idea is in your mind. And if you don't value yourself as a human being, if you don't think that you deserve love, if you don't think that you're worth people's friendship, then you're always going to be failing and always going to hate. You got to fix that part in yourself that hates yourself, that part that doesn't love yourself. You got to fix that. You got to address that. And then you can start to take these steps and move forward. But until you fix that part of yourself, it's always going to try to attack you and hurt you and stop you from forward progress. You know, every time you fail, it's going to get after you. Every time you don't measure up to somebody, it's going to tell you you got to recognize those are negative enemy thoughts they're not supposed to be there. You got to remember you're worth love, you're worth friendship, you're valuable to the human race. There's people that love you, people that care about you, and you can't ever fail your way out of existence. So I guess that's what I would say.
Man, that's powerful stuff, man. And thanks again. I'd like to give credit to CL the Source, because he reminded me of this same thing that you just reminded me, and it was a perfect ending for the episode, is that it always comes back to love, man. It always comes back to love, you know? I mean, love is the most powerful force in the universe. And if once you begin to love yourself and you learn how to love yourself, then yeah, that will radiate within your body and out into the space, and that love will come back to you, man. And I think that's one thing that we really need to keep in mind with all the craziness going on in the world and with all the feelings that we can have about all these things, man. We have to address it with love, calmness, and clarity, and not force all the time. So Thank you so much, Tony, man, for coming on. It was a great sort of getting my feet back wet again with someone that I'm so familiar with and so comfortable with, and someone whose opinion and knowledge I value very highly. I appreciate you, brother. And I thank y'all for listening.
Yeah, God bless, brother.
And God bless y'all. Creating Greatness Podcast.